David is not an easy watch, but it is a very, very powerful film, and I thoroughly recommend it. This was released in 1988. It's directed by John Erman and it's written by Stephanie Liss based on the book by Marie Rothenberg and Mel White. And we have a cast including Bernadette Peters, John Glover, Dan Lauria, and we also have Matthew Lawrence as David. And it is based on the true story. I went in knowing nothing other than the basic premise. That doesn't feel like the right word to use here, but knowing just the basic outline, and I will explain more about that in a moment. And if that is the case for you, I would advise doing the same because it is really disturbing. But if you know the true story and you know all of the details, I'd say it's still maybe worth a watch. But certainly if you're like me and you're looking to learn about this, then it's a pretty fascinating and a very emotional place to start. Very basically, David, as a young boy, was set on fire by his father. And I had so many questions going into this. Why did he do it? How did he have the means of doing it? In what setting was he able to do this? And what happened to David as well? And I had none of those answers going into this. And my need for those answers made this a really fascinating film. And I did read a little bit about the true story afterwards. And from what I can see, it seems to be pretty factually accurate, but if anybody has any thoughts on that are maybe to the contrary, please feel free to let me know. As a story, it is very, very gripping, and it's so difficult to watch. The beginning is so strong, and the suspense basically never ends. We get to know David immediately, we get to like David as a character straight away, which obviously makes it all the more emotional, and at the very beginning we have some really happy scenes. And because we know what's around the corner, we don't necessarily know when that corner is approaching, but because we know something is about to happen, it makes those happy scenes just so painful to watch because we're waiting for the inevitable. And again, that's why I think, or why I advise at least, that if like me you don't know the details, it's better to go in without that knowledge, because certainly I didn't know what was going to happen or when it was going to happen, and that made it so suspenseful. But as I said, even if you do know the details of the true story, it's probably one that's still worth watching. Also, leading up to that incident, if I can use that word, they feature flames in several different places. We see fire in different places, and it's subtle, but it's so effective, reminding us constantly that the scene we're looking at might not be that harrowing, it might not be that tragic, but remember, something is about to happen to turn that around. And it's subtle, but it's so, so effective, really keeping it in our mind that something horrible is about to happen. The characters are very well written. I don't know how true they are to the real individuals, but they're very believable within the context of the film, and we have some really great performances. We have some really, I don't want to say too much about actually what happens, but the aftermath aspect is really interesting. And for me, that's actually the bit that I found to be the most fascinating. And I guess getting some answers there, and a lot of my questions were answered, I guess, after the fact. And that was, for me, the most interesting aspect. But the build up as well is very, it's difficult to watch because we know something's about to happen, but as I said, I didn't know when or how, and it was all round, start to finish, a really emotional film that has a very well executed narrative, at least based on the story. Again, I can't comment on the true events, but within the story, within the film, it is very, very effective and very well done. Strong character writing, great performances, visually very effective, great music. I do absolutely recommend it. But that's with two caveats. The first caveat being, please remember, it's very emotional and not an easy watch at all. I don't think there are any moments where it's light and fluffy. As I said, even at the beginning, when we have the happier scenes and we see glimpses of flames here and there, we're constantly being reminded of what is going to happen. So it is very intense. And the other caveat, of course, is that, please remember, I don't know too much about the true story. I did some reading, as I said. I'm recommending it based on my limited knowledge. I guess I can say I watched this to gain that information, but if you are an expert on the true story, you might have a very different opinion there, which is completely fair enough. So take that with a pinch of salt. But in general, I think David is a powerful film, an emotional, difficult challenging film to watch, but if it sounds like a film for you, or if it's something you feel like you're able to watch at the moment, then I'd say it's absolutely worth checking out.